Okay, so thank you very much for attending to this conference. I introduce myself quickly. So I'm David Jawen. I'm sales director at Avision. Our company is mainly dedicated to encoding video streams and decoding them. So we have a complete ecosystem for contribution, I would say, using bonded or not bonded solutions, depending on the products we have. I am very happy to welcome Morten Brandstrup with us, Head of Technology at TV2 Denmark News. And so he will present to us the different use cases he did in Denmark, thanks to our technology. So thank you, Morten, for being there.
Thanks a lot for inviting me.
You're more than welcome, of course. So indeed, the use case that we are trying to present today is how to cover events with light crews and minimal stuff and minimal crews, sorry, and minimal devices on the field, so to be more efficient as possible for remote productions. So the first use case we had in Denmark was about the Danish Parliament. So Morten had a special use case for that in the Danish Parliament. Could you tell us a little bit more, Morten, about this one?
Sure. The Danish Parliament have its own very huge production facility. They are producing as a whole internal meeting and so on. And that means that they have 7 galleries where they produce meeting and output from them. And they do that in really good, high quality. The Parliament is also have embedded edition for both Danish radio and TV2. So we have more than 25 staff who have their daily duty inside of the Parliament. But the Parliament is also very difficult. Of course, there's a lot of restriction related to security and so on to access it. But it's also a very old building with a lot of thick walls. It's the first iron steel building in Denmark in that size, and that means it's a great Faraday bore, and it has it's tricky place. It's a place where you have to respect the old interior, where you cannot just draw cable as you would like to. And during the last more than 10 years, the Parliament have pushed us into be more efficient, removing cables, and do not have they don't want us to have running cable on the floors, and would potentially like us to be much more wireless when we operate inside the building. They have a huge nice fiber infrastructure, but we need that wireless fiber connection. That's where we have been looking into the 5G private network setup for this. Okay.
So one of the first trial you did was during elections in Denmark, where you deployed the first 5G private network. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. The last 2 years we've been part of an international Horizon project called 5G Records, where we together with BBC, RMD, RAI, RMD, ABU, and TV2 have explored the possibility in using 5G standalone non-public network for high-end production. So we're not talking about just but talking about more than news gathering. We're talking about multi-camera production setup. And it was part of that trial where we last summer had the first really field production going on in the 5G record, where we in our Tivoli breakfast studio explored the possibility of using multi-camera in 5G domain. That we did this similar stuff inside the Parliament for the election night. But I think you have here a nice overview of what is it that what is special for the Havision equipment, David.
Indeed, yeah. In that slide, we are presenting a little bit our solution that is very ultra low latency. That is very important for you. You told us, Morten, to be at a very low latency just because of being compared to other cameras. We need to be in the same level of latency to work all together. Indeed. So.
Yes. Yeah, because an election night is a mixed production where we have as a partly remote and a bunch of OB trucks on site. We are sharing cameras together with Danish Radio, so it's a multi-camera production with more than 55 wired camera spread over the whole building complex. And of course, we have normally also traditional custom modulated wireless system running inside of the production. But for the first time here, we had the 5G private network and took 2 of those cameras, and they were part of the multi-camera production in the parliament. So they were not only as reporters in front of the camera, but it had to be mixed up with wired camera. So of course the latency was critical for that. We deployed this neutral wireless kit of equipment, which is a small box which contained the core network and all the radio equipment. And then you basically just plug in a couple of antenna, and you boom, here you go. You have an advanced 5G hotspot, and pick out the traffic on the back of that and put that into the production core network. So it was this kind of ruggedized stuff that we are used to for OB production. It's very similar to what we would do with custom modulated, but it had this bi-directional function that the IP network have, which is so much different from the custom modulated. And I think if you go to the next slide on here, so we had, the thing is we're using just a standard Pro unit. So it was, stuff that we have on the shelf already and used normally for daily news gathering with multiple SIM cards. But for this occasion, we just had enabled as a one 5G modem and one SIM card, one special SIM card for the 5G private network. We had a spectrum in what band called N77, which is about the normal mid-band for 5G. And you can see here in the back is the antenna, maybe a little diffused, but it is the RAN and the radio network for the 5G. And then the Pro unit for that. And we had 2 cameras. If you take the next slide, you can see here that we had one inside one of the bigger parties. The thing is that all the political party have a party inside of the parliament in big, different meeting rooms. And here for one of the parties, one of the bigger one, we had the antenna here and placed a little about the crowd. There was scattering 300 people inside of the room, and we had the lower picture down there is one screen grab from the production where we are interviewing some of the politicians here. So all this was on 5G. We also had a second antenna on the same network outside of the parliament, because that's what you can do with that kind of technology. So we had an antenna outside, and whenever the politician arrived in front of the parliament, we could mix up with all the OB camera, the crane and the Steadicam and so on. But we had this handheld camera running on the 5G network and mix that up into full production.
And so you can confirm that you were alone on this network, so it was full dedicated to you.
It was full dedicated to us. It was our own spectrum, like you do it on custom modulated, but this was owned and operated by us. There was no telco involved in this, and we just deployed the kit for that, and we were running these two cameras on top of that. The good thing was that the director for the whole production really had no comments on this and barely noticed that we have switched 2 of the wireless camera into the 5G, because there was no technical difference, and the latency was as low as just below 100 milliseconds in glass to glass. So it was, it functioned. It worked for the purpose. The coverage of the network and so on was what we are used to in that frequency band. So it's durable. It's easy to deploy basically. And the spin-off of this was, of course, a lot of press releases and
it was a real success.
Yeah, because this was actually the kind of first in the multi-camera production setup. We're real proud, and it worked.
Yeah, it was a kind of a first in the world that you did during those elections. Yeah. So, and then from the private 5G network, then we are going to the 5G slicing. So we are not anymore talking about non-public network, but public network with the slicing. So could you explain us a little bit what is the difference and what it opens?
Yeah, for the private network, we have our own spectrum. So we need an agreement with the regulator that we get access to some of the spectrum. And that's fine. We deploy our own network and all the cool stuff. But of course, it also makes sense to utilize 5G network, which is already in place, the commercial network, and take some of their capacity. And I think most of you who have dealt with bundled cellular have been lagging some time of bandwidth and might have seen congestion and stuff like that, where you're not really sure, you know, if you can trust the connection. And that was what we have discussed with the telco the last couple of years. And 1.5 years ago, we tried out in the parliament again. When there's an opening in the first week of October, there's an opening of the Danish parliament. And that time we were sharing a Steadicam between Danish radio and TV2 with the Prime Minister walking from the Prime Minister's office back to down to the parliament. And 1.5 years ago, we then tried to compare it side by side with having a slice in the commercial network. So this was the TDC, one of the national operator, that gave us the capacity for that, and we could compare the custom related to the 5G. Again, we saw that we could reduce dramatically the latency because we now have control of the network and capacity. But it needs to be improved and be better off with some characteristic for the 5G. I think if you switch to the next slide, we then made a project together with the national telco about having this slicing. So prior to the Tour de France, they assigned 25% of the upload capacity, and of course we are talking upload, so we don't give a shit about gigabit download. It's us content provider that need to upload. So it was 25% of the upload capacity during the 3 first stages in Denmark, and that went so. There was always a lot of stuff to learn about the configuration and so on. But you know, Tour de France is 3 weeks, and started up in Copenhagen, and 3 weeks later it ended up in Paris, and of course it's a Dane on the podium winning the yellow jersey. And when he arrived back in Copenhagen, again we were assigned capacity when he got from the airport and into the city center of Copenhagen, where a lot of people are gathering together. But let's see how we managed to do that and how we utilize it, the slicing. Run the video, please.
Okay.
Welcome to this presentation of a new car with embedded cameras that we are going to use tomorrow because we actually won the Tour de France. 3 inputs, 3 streams, and we had a camera here in the front doing the picture of Jonas Vingegaard, microphone, so we can do an interview with him. A camera from behind. We had a beauty shot of the whole car. Top of this we will have a helicopter and a motorbike. Jonas in the front and his daughter and girlfriend to the left. How do we get this stream to TV2? We use this quad-link cell with 4 embedded 4G modems. On the top of that, inside the Pro 460, we have 6 5G modems. And then We got this 450 megahertz 4G router as well. And hopefully we can get something out of this when we enter in the center of Copenhagen, because there would be thousands of people, maybe 30,000, 50,000, who are using the mobile phone at the same time doing video streams and so on. Let's see what happens.
Der sætter han sig ind på passagersædet. Frida og Trine sidder bagved, naturligvis i en autostol til Frida, og så er det Jens Kassler fra DSU, der kommer til at køre bilen.
Vi er jo imponerede fans, og vi er jo vilde med det. Vi elsker cykling.
Og det her tror jeg godt, vi kan vende os til.
Prøv lige at se, de her nærmest ikke kommet igennem med bilen.
Ej, det er jo helt vildt, det der.
Det er virkelig rørende. Så tusind tak til alle danskere.
Det er virkelig rørende at se, hvordan danskerne bakker op.
Så kører han ind foran rådhuset.
Yeah, as you can see, this is one of these production where you need to be sure about the connectivity, because you only have one shot. And by having the slides in the network, we were pretty sure that we had the capacity, and this worked out brilliant. As you can see, this was the host signal, shared international, and there was not a single dropout in that whole production, which were all at a remote production, so switching between different 3 camera coming out from the car.
Yeah, it's really amazing to see the quality you got with this transmission, considering that you were transmitting on public networks. I mean, and considering the number of people sharing the bandwidth, using the same antennas as you were, the quality you got was just amazing. So that's very great.
Yeah, and there was around 60,000 people on the city center when he arrived there, and they were all streaming on Facebook and Instagram and so on. So yes, we were lucky, and we have tried this before. Whenever there's a Danish team winning, they would take the same journey. And this is the first time where we actually succeeded with this. Normally we will have dropouts the last couple of 100 meters when they enter the square.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So the quality of service is critical, and it's of course that service that we all would like to have, whoever is visit, whatever content we are producing, it be news, it be sports, it be corporate event, and so on. And on the top of this trial with TDC Ericsson, we wrote a white paper, and I think the next step here will be looking into what we achieved at the Mobile World Conference, which is the telco industry's IPC show in Barcelona, which was held here a couple of weeks ago. And at that occasion, we were showcasing together with Ericsson what slicing means and how it can change the operation, not only operation, but also the whole production setup. So at the Ericsson's booth, they have deployed a commercial configured 5G network, and it was shared between a lot of different user cases. But in the network, there were 2 slices which were dedicated to our 2 cameras. So we had 2 times 20 megabit reserved capacity. And I think there's a video here which pretty nice shows what it's about.
Hello, welcome to our media production demonstration of a 5G standalone system. Today I'm going to explain to you how 5G network slicing technology will bring value to the media production industry. Here in this hall we have set up a 5G standalone system operating with public network settings, like in a public network. We are using this cellular bonding device, which is typically equipped with 2 or more SIM cards to illustrate the changes. Today, in a cellular bonding mode, this device is operating at 1 to 1.5 seconds latency. Thanks to the network slicing and the guaranteed bitrate, it is possible to run this device in a low latency mode, operating at 100 milliseconds latency. So this type of latency will change the way how the media producer can create media content and do their operations. So Morten, please explain us, how does it change the systems?
The low latency is really nice, you know, they give me a touch of feel that it's like the PDZ camera was wired into the control. So this is really something that we can use for remote production, potentially also switch between several cameras in the field and so on. And I have a guarantee for the bandwidth, so I know that I'll actually be able to do my production in this setup. But Torsten, network via, how is this possible?
So here we see an illustration of the entire setup. Here on the left side we see the typical network of the mobile system, of the mobile network. We have the RAN network slicing, we have the core network slicing, and using SD-WAN technology we are extending actually the network slice from the mobile system into the media production environment. And Morten, so from the media production side, what does that enable you to do?
Well, if I see it from my perspective, I have my production center here, my broadcast center, and what we get out of this is that we get the exposure of our production network into a SIM card. So it's having our production SIM card in the network with all this, with a secure tunnel between the SIM cards and the production side. And that's cool. That's something that we can use for the production. And now we can talk about, you know, how we should order this service, because it's quite important that we understand that there's not endless capacity in the network for the uplink. But if I would like to do a production here at Mobile World, I have to choose this area, which is defined with up to 4 slices. So this is what is offered, and I can book the slice in the time slot that I would like to. And of course, when I have booked it, I also need to know how it does perform. So this is my camera run, and I can see some key data. I can see the uplink speed, I can see the latency, jitter, and so on. So it's all this kind of information we need for the production. Torsten, it's been a couple of really good days here.
Yeah,
we
it
can
was
probably
really,
just fade
really
it
cool
out here, David.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this this showed what we were demoing at the Mobile World, and I think this is really this is that kind of service I think that we all are begging for. And what we did here was showcasing that it actually has a it does give us the quality of network that we need for this. And as we also said here, we were able to run a standard Pro unit below 100 milliseconds in a commercial network. And that means that, you know, the touch and feel of when you control something is like it's one-to-one, and you can start as it really compared to having a custom modulated system and so on. So it's really it's that kind of service that we should argue for and ask the telco for actually being able to provide us. And now you're standing in Oslo, and I can tell you that I have several people and larger group from Telenor coming to our booth and discuss this and see the demo. And I've said that they should go back to all you in Norway and show it there and potentially offer it for commercial. Okay.
That's nice to know that our Norwegian friends will be able to do the same use cases as you did in Denmark. So what I see from this use case is that it's very easy to deploy and it's very reliable. I mean, so very convenient for productions yeah, it's very efficient as far as I understand it.
It is really promising what we see now in the 5G domain, and we are close to this tipping point where it actually is like having our own private network. It's either we deploy our own private network or we buy us as a service in a commercial network, and it's durable, and it will really change what we can do with the equipment that we already have.
Yeah, it looks like your own LAN indeed. So
it is.
Yeah, nice. Okay, great. Thank you very much, Morten, for this presentation. Now we have a second presentation about a project we did with Amedia here in Norway. So Jens Peter, CEO of Video Utstyr, will present it to us. Do you want to stay with us, Morten?
I'm awesome.
Okay,
Have a
thank you.
good meeting.
Cheers,
Thanks
bye.
a lot. Cheers, bye.
Thank you, David. Jeg tenkte jeg tar resten av presentasjonen på norsk, hvis det er greit for dere. Mitt navn er Jens Petter Pettersen. Jeg er daglig leder i Videoutstyr Norge, og vi er så heldige å være forhandler for AV Vest og nå Hivision, som har disse produktene. Jeg tittet på alle de sakene som jeg har gjort med Hivision i Norge, og da er det en sak eller et case som jeg synes er kjempespennende. Og det er Amedia, som David nevnte. Amedia er et stort mediehus i Norge. De har over 100 lokale, regionale og nasjonale aviser. De fleste har et forhold til Amedia gjennom sin lokalavis. Og for noen år tilbake så bestemte de at de skulle begynne å gjøre livestreaming fra breddeidretten. Slik at man kunne se når familie, venner, naboer var og utførte idrett rundt i Norge. Og det de hadde liksom sånn ønske, de ville gjøre livestream fra lokale sportsarenaer i Norge. Og det startet vel med ganske lavt i divisjonene. Nå er det helt opp til første divisjon, som jeg har skjønt. Utfordringen er at det ofte ikke var nettverk. Noen ganger er det ikke strøm engang på stadion rundt omkring, haller. Og det er ikke alle som er så fine som den som er vel i Henningsvær, hvor de har arena. Så de måtte ha en løsning som kunne bruke 4G eller 5G. De hadde også et krav om at det måtte være kjempeenkelt å betjene, portabelt, veldig liten riggetid, og at det skulle være skalerbart, det vil si om man skulle ha flere enheter, så skulle man enkelt kunne skalere opp eller ned. Typisk når de gjør Norway Cup, så trengte de ekstra mange kanaler, og da ønsket de kunne leie inn ekstra kapasitet. Så her er en veldig forenklet skisse over løsningen som ble. Det var, man tar lyd og bilder fra et kamera inn i en enhet som legger på grafikk, klokker, stilling, sånne ting. Og så bruker man Hivision sin Air-sender for å sende det opp i skyen. Og den senderen som er avbildet her, den har 2 innebygde modem, 4G eller 5G, og kan utvides med flere forbindelser ut. Den kan også bruke Wi-Fi og Ethernet samtidig. Og det er litt viktig, for hvis du er på en stadion som har Wi-Fi, så kan man koble seg på det også. Kanskje man har kablet nett, og det kan være hovedforbindelsen. Men da har man modemene som en backup hvis noe skulle gå gærent med Ethernetten. For eksempel at noen slår på vaffeljernet i pausen, og sikringen går, og alt forsvinner. Signalet blir sendt opp til en skyserver, og fine med skyserver er at det er skalerbart. Man kan fyre opp flere instanser hvis man skal ha flere kanaler, og man kan lett slå de av igjen. Og etter hvert i skyserveren, det skyserveren gjør, den samler alle de signalene som kommer inn til ett signal, og sender det videre til leveringsnettverket hos Amedia. I dag har de kapasitet til å gjøre 150 samtidige livesendinger. Og i fjor fikk jeg høre at de hadde gjort 5300 events. Og de fleste av de er jo lange, altså fotballkamper-størrelse. Det er ikke bare 3 minutters nyhetsinnslag, noe av det også, men de fleste er altså sportsarrangementer. På toppen av denne løsningen så har de en manager hvor de kan se alle aktive events, og på den måten kunne enkelt overvåke, men også hjelpe en journalist som er ute i felten og har koblet opp det her hvis det ikke virker. Kan fjernstyre enheten, se oi, du har glemt å koble til HDM i kabelen, og sånn type ting. Ja. Så jeg vet ikke om det er noen som har noen spørsmål så langt. Det er jo ikke alle som har behov for 150 samtidige livesendinger. Så da tenkte jeg at jeg skulle avslutte med å vise en løsning som Haivision har, som vi kaller for Be On Air, som består av en sånn encoder-sender som har innebygde modemer og en sky-serverløsning komplett i pakka. Slik at hvem som helst kan kjøpe den og gjøre livesendinger. Og den kan da sende videre til inntil 5 forbindelser samtidig. Facebook, YouTube, CDN, eller faktisk også til et annet AV-Vest-nettverk. Så du kan være freelancer og sende til Amedia, eller du kan være freelancer og sende til TV 2 med en sånn løsning. I tillegg får du med at du kan bruke mobiltelefoner, Android eller iPhone. Og den appen kan du installere på så mange telefoner du vil, men det er kun én som kan være i drift om gangen. Veldig populær løsning, så vi ser at en del industrikunder har tatt i bruk, eventselskaper og sånt. Dette kan dere se på stand vår hvis dere kommer innom. David, Mikkel og jeg vil være på stand under hele utstillingen og kan svare på alle spørsmål dere måtte ha etterpå. Det var det. That's it.
Is there any question concerning the first presentation, the second one? No. Then, thank you very much for attending.